Watch it up there.
Talking about them.
Ah, look at
There
that.
they are, huh? All right, good evening, everybody. December 1st, hard to believe, 2015 Fincom meeting. Tonight we have Andrew Samarco from the Open Space Committee, and we're going to do some budget updates. Our fire chief is here, and I think the police chief will be coming. I don't know if you're just coming to listen or whether you're going to talk, but do some budget updates, and but that's the main thing, just see what's going, what the next steps are in the budget and so on. Okay, and just in case I forget to say it at the end, next week's meeting, or not next week, 2 weeks, December 15th, that'll be a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and School Committee on the budget. So that'll be,
Yes.
Bonnie will have more budget information for us then.
On that point, are you making the same presentation on the 14th to the selectmen?
I will have it ready, and it will be in their packets. I'm not sure if Keith's going to want me to go all out.
My only thought is just, if they already get the presentation on the Monday, will they show up here on the Tuesday, which is
Right.
valuable?
Yeah, I don't think that that's the intent. He just wanted to have it available
Okay.
for the packets, so, and I will.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrew?
Hi, everyone. So, I've been asked to come here tonight. Did you guys have any particular questions about the open space?
We'd like
Well,
you
actually-
to step up and
Oh, sure.
sit right here, please.
Oh,
So use the microphone
Doing that now? Making them
so
all
the,
witnesses?
so the people at home can hear you.
the witness box, okay.
TV guy says so, so we'll do it that way.
So, just to update you guys.
So we hear about you from Economic Development, and then we know there's Conservation Commission, and then other things coming from as part of the Open Space Plan, and so it's just like, well, maybe I'd have somebody come in and just explain to us exactly where open space fits with all these different things and what your mission is versus some of the other groups.
Okay, so basically the mission of this committee is to make up the 5-year open space and recreation plans for the town. And the town basically uses these as a set of blueprints for like what we want to do with open space and recreation in the town, our goals, what we have right now, and what we'd like to have.
So is this a new group as part of the Economic Development? As
No.
part of the, or, no, not Economic Development, as part of the master plan, or it's always
Oh,
there?
it's separate. This,
So it's always there?
Yes.
So do you, like every 5 years, work on a new plan, or is this an
Yes.
evolving plan? Or?
Yep, every 5 years, there's a
Okay.
new plan put into place. The committee's been in existence since, I think, about 2003, or maybe even earlier.
Earlier than that, because I actually proposed its creation.
Okay.
And wrote the
Why
chart.
am I not surprised?
Well,
Very good.
and if, I'll just interject and then promise to be quiet for a little bit after. But to give background, Andrew's exactly right. But the thought was, at the time, that the master plan, the open space plan, which is also a subcomponent of the master plan, but has its own life, only got addressed as a formal document every 5 years. It was up for renewal, in that various open space initiatives would just come and go in oblivious to the plan that existed in
Okay,
writing. So
right.
the notion of having the plan was kind of to keep us on track of following it,
Okay.
on an ongoing basis, and to judge proposals against that. So, and then obviously when the time to come up to renew it is, their main mission at that time is to supervise the rewriting of it.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. So.
So how often
Go ahead.
does your committee meet?
Lately, we've been meeting quite a bit because we're actually almost done with the 2015 Open Space and Recreation Plan. I know I've said that like 30 times now. So yeah, we're hoping to have that done in the next couple of weeks. MAPC has been working very hard on getting that done for us. They're wrapping up the ADA compliance things right now, and we're just finishing up the maps. So.
So once you have the plan, is it a book that goes on the shelf, or is
Oh,
it
no,
a public meeting
the town's-
feeds input out to the town?
It's-
Does the town have to come to the group to hear about it? I mean, what's the process here?
It is a literal book, yes, but the town has always been pretty good at reviewing it from time to time when open space purchases come up. It's a very important document for the town in that way.
So the Open Space Committee generates a report. Somebody generates a report that you support, the MAPC. Puts it together.
Sometimes.
Well, this time.
This particular report was mainly done by the committee, but MAPC did support us with a updating maps, and
So what happens once you have the book in your hand?
once we have the book, it goes to the state, and it does basically sit around until we need it, but we do try to be proactive with open space planning, recreation planning, seeing what we need done, so.
So what is it, like specific places that you're going after, or is it percentage of land, or what is the plan? What does it look
The
like?
plan is kind of a general idea of where the town wants to be. We do a lot of public outreach to see what people want. Obviously, it's very hard to know what 9,000 people want, but we try our best through surveys, public meetings, but you guys know how hard it is to see what everybody wants. But
A lot for this, because I'm familiar with different versions of it, in the initial stages, before the creation of the open space committee, and actually the official original name was the Open Space Implementation, Open Space Plan Implementation Committee, and was that the open space plan in its first iterations had laundry lists of scattered properties, and there was no rhyme or reason to it, so the revisions that, predecessors to Andrew went through put more of a rigor to it. We're trying to protect wildlife corridors through here. We're trying to connect various open space parcels, on the map. We're trying to protect properties near bodies of water so that there's some criteria that you can judge properties against. I'm not sure how much the Open Space Committee, as it's presently constituted, is looked to for advice or guidance on that, but that was the
That was going to be my
intent.
next question. So
Yeah.
how do you work, one, with the Conservation Commission and others when parcels come up? How does
when
that?
parcels come up, it is definitely a group process. You have to have input from the Concom, Recreation. But yeah, what was the question again?
Just, so you have your plan or priorities or ideas of how this should happen. So land comes available. Let's not use the Cooper land. Let's use the thing over in Grimes, the K land over in Grimes
K-land.
property. Okay, because it's less baggage with that one, right?
Yeah.
So what happens? Somebody says, okay, it's available. Okay, so then what happens?
So I think the first step would be, how would we fund this? And then actually determine whether or not the town has.
But where do you guys come into play? How do you come into play?
We come into play in various stages, I would say. In first establishing that the town has been interested in the property, because like Paul was saying, we do maintain a list of properties that could potentially be put up for sale that the town might be interested in. And then for funding, like I said, this plan basically makes the town eligible for various grants through the Department of Conservation Services, like land grants. What's the other one? It's like diversity of wildlife or whatever.
So if it meets our plan, whatever that is, and that makes it eligible for some state funding,
Yep.
and if it doesn't meet the plan, then it doesn't.
If it's a property that we haven't looked at, that the town hasn't identified as something that we'd be interested
Right.
in, if it just comes out of nowhere, that might be kind of an odd situation, but most of the time, when something comes up for sale, it's been something that we've had our eye on for quite a while, and.
Many properties you don't know about, I would think, right?
Yeah.
Right. I would
So
hope
Andrew,
that's, yeah.
once you have your plan in place,
Yep.
the committee meets or goes into dormancy, or how does that work?
In the past, to be honest with you, the committee has completed the plan and then gone dormant, but we'd like to start maintaining an active committee in the future, just for land acquisitions and stuff
So
like
then it's
that.
up like to the town administrator? I mean, who then in the town, if you guys kind of go dormant, who then in the town is the advocate for this thing as you, okay, that's the problem.
That's the
Okay,
problem.
It
yeah.
has no statutory or bylaw powers. It was created and continues to be essentially an advisory committee to the
Okay.
selectmen. But over the years, it was allowed not only to go dormant, but go like unappointed. There were periods of time when they were down to like one or
Okay.
two members. And, in its, it should be active. I'm glad Andrew's active, and I assume there's some other folks working with you. And in that capacity, they ought to be kind of advising the selectmen, here's what your open space plan says, here's how this property, in our opinion, matches up against
Right.
it. And that's kind of it.
Right.
Other than drafting the renewal of the plan.
And then maybe going public with some of that advice. I mean, is it not just but I mean,
right.
making the town aware of, this is our recommendation and so on, so that helps them be better consumers as well.
So
So it's-
are all the members of this committee appointed by the selectmen?
They are.
Okay, so it's a selectmen subcommittee. So is there any plan to review this with the selectmen?
Oh,
See if-
yes. Oh, yeah. As soon as we have our first draft of the 2015 plan done, we're hoping to have a public hearing, a public forum to show the plan off to the town and with the various boards and committees, so.
So it's not just open space, but it's recreation also?
Oh, yeah, it's recreation as well. It's a very big part of the plan.
Do you recommend turf fields? Do you get into that kind of stuff?
We don't. It is, I mean, field usage is definitely a big thing in town. There's a shortage of recreational
Right.
places for kids to play, and it's got to be addressed. So we do mention that in the plan.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? I mean this to be a grilling or anything like that. People are just really curious. I mean, we hear this, and it sounds like there is some ambiguity, so that's why you got the questions, but
So Andrew,
appreciate
does
you
the
coming in.
plan follow any specific, say, state mandated format?
It does, yeah. There's a format put together by DCS that every town has to follow in putting together their plan.
To be eligible for a lot of state programs, we have to have an up-to-date open space
Yeah.
plan.
Okay.
all right, so that's key. Okay, so then that fits, and then it's basically selectmen subcommittee, so that makes sense, so. Okay, anybody else? Anybody out there, any questions for Andy? Okay. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much, appreciate you
Not a
coming in.
problem.
That's right,
thanks.
stay in there.
Of reviving interest in that process, important for it to be ongoing.
This is true.
No, it really is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Look forward to the first edition being published.
Yes, we're all looking forward to it.
Signed copy.
And what's
I
your
want a signed
timeframe for
copy.
that?
The time frame, I think we're hoping to have that done within a few weeks, because I had emailed MAPC maybe 3 weeks ago, and they were hoping to have it done about a month from then, so.
Sounds like a stocking stuffer to me.
Yeah. But we're looking forward to it.
All right, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay. Budget updates?
If you want to push this until after the departments, they saw the slideshow this afternoon in the department meetings.
Make 'em
so
sit
I'm
through
gonna
it again.
torture them again.
Okay, no, you guys, and I don't, Scott, you're not really have anything you want to present, right? I know police chief does, so you want to come up and talk, because I know he made, Matt made some changes to the police
Not really
budget, he
here to
just
pitch
wants
you, I'm just
to.
here to tell you what I did tonight, I guess, because we didn't get on the agenda. These are the replacements for your package. Basically, I met with Fred and I met with Betsy, and I've talked to a couple of you others, and I figured I'd get to you all at once. After the meeting, a couple of the selectmen come up to me and said, hey, really want you to sit down, sharpen your pencil, take a look at that 19-officer budget. What we did is I really sat down and looked at the schedule that we were going to use, and basically we covered cut another $9,000 out of overtime, so that lowers the overall cost of the town by about $9,000. So you'll see the changes reflected in the 19-officer budget. It brings down about the total to about $93,000 total for the town. It's about a $59,000 increase for the police budget, and about a $33,000 increase in the benefit package. So, what we did is I looked at what the schedule looked like, felt comfortable at what kind of overtime we were able to carve out, and again, if we're able to get this done and do this next fiscal year, again, I think I've always committed to the fact that sharpening the pencil is. I find I can carve more overtime out and lower the cost going forward, and we will certainly do that. This has been, Fred had asked me a couple questions about overtime, how we're doing this year. This is a terrible year to look at it, because I basically run 3 people short since the beginning of the fiscal year, between a maternity leave, injuries, and people in the academy. I've basically been 3 people short, so we're running it, we're not going over on our overtime budget, but we're certainly running at 100%. But that tells me that if I get up to full strength and get the extra personnel, and I was saying to Betsy specifically the other day when we talked, I also feel I'll be able to fill a lot of 4-hour blocks than 8-hour blocks all the time. And Fred had asked, do I think there's going to be any kickback from any of the officers losing a boat? I mean, total cut in overtime roughly runs about $60,000 total by the time you get, from what we would have been in fiscal 17 to what, if we go to the 19. And at this point, the amount, they're tired of working the extra hours. They certainly want to work their 40 hours, and there is other opportunities there besides overtime. I would prefer overtime to be, the extra coverage when I need it and training, rather than right now, it's all just, I mean, we're ordering people in on the average right now 11 times. And order-ins aren't fun, because that means we're telling somebody, too bad it's your weekend off, you're working. And, but right now, that's where we're at. It's just, we're a small department, and, being down a 30 force, or 3 people out of 17 is, it's just hard to take. That's it, really not a pitch right now, but I just wanted to get you the updated packages. Bonnie told me, so I'll get you all updated packages for your files, and I'll probably be back to pitch another day.
But the bottom line is it's about a net 90 grand increase to the town's
That
budget.
is correct.
It's about 60 grand to you, for your budget, and about 30 for fringes and OPEB and all that good stuff, right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Chief?
Thank you, I appreciate your time. Well,
Yeah.
I'll just give you these
Sure.
unless you want.
Yeah, we'll pull those out then. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's gotta go on the page, huh?
All right, and I'll just mention, I mean, you saw my email too, I was not happy, I guess, when right after our all-day budget meeting, that we got that next Monday night, the Board of Selectmen had a meeting, and it got approved that Fire Department, Police Department both had admins with extra hours and an upgrade. It was everything was done according to plan and according to rules, and it all went through person. I mean, there was nothing wrong was done. My concern was that nothing was mentioned about it. We're doing an all-day budget meeting. I have a whole list of people asking for extra people, extra hours, staff upgrades, and it wasn't mentioned. And then 2 days later, that was put through. So, again, nothing was done wrong. I just thought in transparency, and it wasn't. And I'm not putting that on these guys either. I think it was. I think that either Keith or the Board of Selectmen or somebody should have brought it up, but. Because I do want to say that, because I think transparency is very important, and I think it just smelled bad, quite frankly. So, with that, we can talk about this now or later, but I will go through, all of you probably didn't get it, because I just sent it out before I left. But as we were going through the budget meetings, I went down, everybody was asking for additional people, and I wrote it down. And there's a lot. I mean, the Highway Department's asking for an extra engineer, 2 people for the Park Department, plus an upgraded admin. Fire Department wants 5 paramedics. The police department wants 2 officers plus a quarter of a reserve, right? The library wants extra hours. Town clerk wants an extra 5 hours. Veterans wants extra hours. Elder and Human Services, one outreach person plus a half of a driver. Planning department needs a 10-hour clerk. IT department is asking for 15 hours of a technician to help with them. So there's a lot of requests for additional
The
people.
school proposal includes 2 additional people there, too.
Okay, plus the school department. So we have a lot of requests, and I think that to do these things right, it's not just, is any individual one worthwhile? You really have to look across the board and say what's better for the town. And,
Well, I think that the one thing that was briefly mentioned in the IT presentation was the potential impact of Light Department farming out
Yep.
the IT support that the town is now receiving from them. So that could, in the form of some kind of paying for outside services, could be a significant number. And I don't know whether we have any idea what that is at this point or not, but, consultants don't come cheap. So
Right.
that's-
I think we're thinking it's in the $60,000 to $80,000 range. But there is going to be a joint meeting scheduled with the Board of Selectmen and the Light Commissioners in January. I'm not sure at what date, to kind of go through all of that. We'll talk about pilot, we'll talk
I was gonna
about.
say, some of that's pilot
all of,
anyway,
you know,
right? Yeah.
All of the components
But
of,
that 60 to 80 is the town share?
yes.
Okay. Okay, so, I mean, that's basically another full-time, fairly well-paid, the equivalent of a full-time one well-paid person, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And again, not to belabor the point, I'm not doing this to embarrass you guys or anything like that, but my other point with this is because, one department is big enough that you can move money around and hire somebody else, isn't necessarily fair to the smaller department that might need somebody just as much. So that is my concern, is looking at the town as a whole, and that's why I brought that up as a concern. Okay. All right, onward. That's done.
Well, if you're looking for input on that, I think you, in terms of the, are you
Yes.
considering that the
Yeah.
budget update?
Yeah, sure.
A bullet point?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you keyed on the proper point, additional headcount requests. It's what we asked for,
Right.
Or what Bonnie,
Yeah.
and we all kind of consensually agreed to. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind, I imagine, that even though we can afford perhaps more than we've been accustomed to in the past couple of years, that doesn't mean either A, we can afford all, and we certainly can't,
Yep.
or B, that gets us anywhere but farther away from our goals on the OPEB challenges. So, I think it's important to key on all those additional requests, but the thing I would be looking for most is, what is it that the selectmen, they were privy to this, at the same time we were getting the presentation made, so I'd like to know, sometime, I suppose, in the next, month or two, what their priorities are, amongst those various positions, so,
I'm assuming some of that will be baked in with what you have for us on the 15th, right?
I think it's fair to say, too, that in terms of police and fire, and these are not additional headcounts. It's not, because they're replacements.
well,
Right?
you're speaking specifically to the admin positions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're not additional headcounts.
Additional hours and upgrades.
It upgrades,
Yep.
budget neutral. And if it's FY16 budget,
I understand.
what we were doing on that day
Yep.
was the FY17 budget.
And
And that was what was there, FY17 budget.
any notable updates to FY16 is what I asked my departments to do. And it wasn't brought up. So that's the only, and why it wasn't brought up is an issue for another day. But I think it could have been. It could have been highlighted. The amount of money that each of these people will be receiving with the incremental hours plus benefits is the equivalent of what the planning board's looking for. So there's, the selectmen within their purview allowed their managers to move money around within their budgets. And there doesn't appear to be any process whereby other elected boards get a cut at that pie, just because it's, quote, budget neutral. And to Betsy's point, that two of the largest budgets in town, you can find land in $1 million budget. You can't find that in a planning board budget, or in one of the other smaller budgets, or the veterans budget. You look at 3 hours.
I can incorporate this into the budget directive that goes out in the next year, because the directive is pretty specific in that it's asking you to take the existing staff that you have at that point and carry it into the next year. And what I'll do is I'll change the language to say, and any changes that are being requested for fiscal 16, to kind of put that out on the
But
radar.
carrying it forward in both of those cases would have shown that it was more than the normal increase.
Right,
Because
so-
there were more hours
Yep.
and a different rate. So it would have shown up this year over next year. It didn't.
It didn't because I think in part it was my fault, because in looking at the directive that was put out, it was take your staff where you are right now, which they didn't have the additional hours when they crafted the budget, and roll it into next year for level staffing. I should have said, and any changes that you're
No,
looking for.
it
Yeah.
showed up the next Monday night.
Right.
I mean, come on.
And my point isn't so much and Paul, PJ, I'll get to you in a second. It's not the directive, it's the overall approach, right? Again, the whole town, and, I mean, public safety obviously is key, and everybody understands how important it is. There's no question about any of that. It's still just in the whole spirit of transparency and looking at the whole town, and there's all, and in this case, it probably wouldn't have been the case, but maybe, if they can carve that money out of their budget, maybe you should go over here instead. We should always be looking at the budgets of that. Is there an efficiency one place we can put someplace else rather than just adding? That's the zero-based budgeting kind of approach as opposed to just how much you're adding on every year. So that's the conversation from my standpoint.
Yeah, and as you say, in the spirit of doing everything all in one day, one of the points there is to see everything on the table at the same time.
Right, that's the only point of that.
Right. So, PJ?
Separate and related, though, and that is, we need to clone Bonnie. Much later in here, please, because we're at a standstill at another committee meeting without her at this moment.
Oh. Uh-oh.
I just have a quick slide.
Possession is 9 points of the law, right there.
Give away 2 extra guys, because I'll grab her out of here.
That's easy. See, I work with me, chief.
You can call somebody, huh?
Always take muscle to a meeting.
You want to give us a quick version of what you've got to
Sure.
report?
We'll go here.
I appreciate that, thanks, Betsy.
All right,
Yep.
sure, understand.
Get us curious, what's the meeting?
It's the Master Plan Update Steering Committee, Selection Committee.
Oh, the selection committee, right.
Okay. So I will be as quick as I can. We have the tax classification hearing scheduled for Monday night. As I mentioned before, I'm expecting kind of a crowd, probably a more business-related crowd than residential. We typically do not have very many attendees at these hearings. So we're preparing overflow room. We'll be ready for the group. But I just wanted to kind of go over the information and get it before you so you can see what's happened with the levy. We're not going to talk about the rates that might appear, just kind of the changes that have happened over the last year. It's been a big year. We've had revaluation go through, which is something that we do every 3 years. It's a large process. We hired some outside firms to help us with the process because we've got a lot of new commercial stuff, a lot of personal property, and a lot of changes to the residential class. So I kind of wanted to give you an overview of where we are. And I want to thank Steve Venuti because he's done a lot of work with the presentation materials too, so having him has been invaluable. So the 2016 property values, the overall increase in total property value is 9.3%. We're breaking that out into 2 major categories. The existing property value has increased by 5.72%. So that's not new growth, that's just an increase in value because of actual sales data. Houses are going for more money than they were in previous years, so the values are up. In addition to that, new growth has increased the value by 3.58%. That's from commercial, new residential properties, new personal property coming online. And again, as I mentioned, we hired Patriot Systems to come in and do our commercial property review. They looked at 35 parcels that were very complex to help us kind of get a good value assessed for those. We also hired RRC for personal property review. This is a great company. They reviewed over 70% of the accounts that had over a $10,000 limit for personal property. They defend the values in ATB or appellate tax board cases. So they set the values. They have all these tables. They have an expertise level that typical staff might not have. They know if you have a dentist office or a doctor's office, you have this equipment on hand where it might not end up on the formal list, and so they're really helpful in going through that. So total property values, you can see from fiscal 2012 to 16, the green is the residential property values, the pink is the commercial and industrial, and the yellow is personal property. So you can see kind of a big uptick in fiscal 16 for the residential class. That's the new developments coming online, 15 Great Road, Sanderson, all of those new houses.
But that reflects not just new growth, but also new growth plus valuation,
That's
right?
everything, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so that
That's everything.
also could speak to the continued rise in values of existing properties versus commercial properties. right?
Absolutely, yes.
Which
This is
means-
just valuation.
Which means that, like the calls we get, even though the rate may be going up no more than 2.5%, people's residential home bills are likely to rise more than 2.5%.
The rate may go down. I mean, when valuations go up,
The actual bill, I'm talking about.
right, the bill will never go down.
But it'll go up more than 2.5%,
Yes.
because the share of the pie continues to grow on the
Correct.
residential side, yeah.
Correct, absolutely. It is. So here's the property values changes from 12 to 16, and you can see the valuation change in the green is the valuation change, the pink is the new growth. Valuation change going down is typical for personal property, declining at a faster rate than obviously other
Just
property.
depreciation.
Right. And you can see the change in 16 with the new stuff that we have on, with new growth and new properties. Average single-family home values. We were up at 415,000 in fiscal 2007. We saw, pretty steady decline there for several years, and we hovered around the 370 mark. Based on actual sales data, we're back up towards the 400,000 level.
Surprised we're not above where we were when it crashed. I really am, based on what I see
That might be a
selling.
year behind, too, right? I mean,
Yes, it's based on last year, so it's going back up. So we're seeing definitely an increase in the average single-family home. Average commercial kind of experienced the same thing. It was kind of flat for many years at 490. That was not a mathematical average. That was a number that was picked out several years ago as the average mom-and-pop type of commercial property value. And it equated to some of the, the real businesses that you could see on Main Street or Great Road. The commercial values did increase 7.6% in average. So we increased that 490,000 value by the 7.6. And then we looked at it, tested it against some of the actual buildings that we used previously, and it's correct. So there, that value at 528 is accurate.
So, but go back.
Yeah.
So why the big jump? Is it because of the new ones that aren't mom and pop, that we have different commercial properties in here now that we didn't have, or what?
It's both. It's new buildings and increased value in sales. So it's, the values are just going up because
So it's
it's
Toyota
Littleton.
and the Point, basically?
Toyota, The Point, and increased.
The value of existing properties
the value
are
of
finally
existing.
going up again. Well, that's the good news.
It's the sales data. The sales data is a big part of
Seems
this.
so-
Yep.
Okay.
Combined in that, though, you got to realize we do have a lot of vacant properties in the commercial industrial area. So that's might be why it's not creeping up as much as you think. And again, it's a year behind, so. So property by class, we have 21% of the valuation in the commercial, industrial, and personal property class, and 79% is in the residential class. When we went to a split rate back in 1989 or 88, it was a 60-40 split. So we've kind of migrated steadily away from that and been more residential heavy, and now we're seeing a little bit of a, tick back to being under 80%.
Does part of the master plan, does it talk about this, about the value of commercial versus?
Existing master plan doesn't have much on it other than raw data. We have had conversations about making that part a lot more integrated into the actual plan. So that's the intent, is to make the master plan more cognizant of that.
Now, excuse me,
Yep.
the 40B, for example, a fairly large piece of that is rental property. They're apartment buildings.
It's residential.
So even though they're
Yep.
flat-out businesses, the only reason they're there is for people to make money.
Residential, yeah. We actually
They're still
explored that and
considered
wanted to,
residential.
because we were thinking originally, oh, it's got to be commercial.
question.
It's not.
Okay.
So the tax levy and the single tax rate, and in that exact environment, you'd have 21% of the levy in a single rate scenario borne by the commercial and 79% borne by the residential class. So you'd have a single rate, it would be $19.90 per thousand. That compares to the $18.10 that we pay now in the residential class and the $29.89 in the commercial industrial, because it's been pushed. Looking at this data based on last year's info, the combined rate would have been $20.50, I think. But because values have gone up, the combined rate is down. And I want to say that This isn't where you would reduce taxes. This classification hearing is not that exercise. We've already spent the money. It's been appropriated by town meeting, both in May and in November. This is just how that spending plan gets apportioned among the classes. So, just to clarify that, because I know people ask. So the split tax rate, a portion of the single rate in the residential levy is shifted to the commercial, and has been here for several years. The amount of that shift is what the Board of Selectmen vote at the classification hearing. In most years, the shift can't add more than 50% of the existing single-rate commercial, industrial, and personal property levy. So in this example, if the commercial levy is $6 million, the maximum shift allowed would be to add another 50% or another $3 million to that. So you can't go beyond that. You can't shift it any further than that. There are some rare cases in communities like Chelsea and a few of other, like Fall River, I think, where they can go to 175% because they have some special circumstances. We're not one of those.
Glad we don't have that problem. It's a good one not to have.
So in that scenario, you have the $6 million that you would normally assess to the commercial industrial. You're adding $3 million and then reducing the amount borne by the residential class. So instead of the 79% that I show, or 78% that I showed you, the residential class bears 69% in this example, which is a full shift, fully shifted as much as it could be. So that's just kind of what the shift does. So that yellow piece is what the selectmen vote. How much, how big does that get, how small is it? But it's always a push to the commercial class. So this would be the result of that. If that were the example that happened, this is what the new pie would look like, with the commercial class bearing more of the levy.
So are our commercial tax rates higher than other people in 495?
Well, I actually did a little review of that particular aspect of it, and you can't go by the rate. You need to go by the actual bill.
Oh, right.
Because of the valuations.
Right.
So while we might have a high commercial rate, one of the examples that was given out was, that rate is higher than Boston's rate, and it's higher than Westford's, but our bill is lower, much lower than Boston, and lower than Westford's for the commercial property. If you take the average value of the commercial parcel against the same scenarios, our bills are smaller.
Okay.
So you really need to drill it down to what they're paying, not what the rate per thousand is.
Okay.
And this is kind of a chart showing what the CIP factors or the push has been over the past few years. So you can see we bumped up against that 150 in 2002 and again in 2007, and then we kind of went down because values changed. And in 14, we're at 145. The closer you get to 150, the concern is if the commercial values come down, then the only place to place the 2.5% levy increase normally raised is on the residential class, because you've been pushed to the commercial limit. So now the residential class bears the full impact of that 2.5%, which will be more.
But even at the 1.45, or even above 1.4, you don't have much wiggle room.
No,
I mean, you're already right up there.
right.
So
Valuation
if-
changes.
If that scenario actually happened that Bonnie mentioned, it's slamming right back into the residential anyway.
Did you hit that in 2008? Because that's when things crashed. And it looks like you're up at the top almost there.
Yeah, what happened is in 2008, the values went down. We bumped up against it. We weren't over it. We just eked by it. And then, values kind of have been creeping back up a little bit because IBM came in, that value went up. So that helped. Had IBM, that was right when IBM came in. So had they not, we might have been in a different circumstance.
But part of that reflects, too, the selectmen's conscious decisions to kind of reduce that, too, right? Well, haven't they taken the public stand of moving away from the highest?
Yeah, different
possible-
boards have different, different
But there
opinions
is
of
some
it.
fluctuation in
Yeah,
there
there
on that
is.
end, too.
In 2000, it went up to 147. That was, it was a bigger jump than normal. You can see it kind of,
Right.
that was a conscious vote.
Right.
And then it, came down a little bit last year, so.
The last couple of years has been sitting right around 145.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the difference between 145 and 150 is not anything to get elected over.
Doesn't prevent a long debate on the subject, though.
Right, absolutely, right.
And then, so this is the total property value changes, valuation changes in green, and again, a lot of that is personal property depreciating, and then new growth. So you can see this is projecting the values forward in 17, 18, and 19. Again, we're looking at another, 40 some odd million in new growth in fiscal 17 because those houses are coming online still, and the commercial properties are coming online. The point, we'll have the movie theater probably fully done by then, and the hotels and things that are made in there. But, that'll be a big year, and then it kind of goes back down to what we've seen in the previous years. So in looking at the...
Excuse me, what impact, if any, say Foster Street is basically vacant again? There's got to be people coming in for abatements and saying that our property can't be worth that much because I can't rent it. So, I mean, what impact does that have on these numbers?
Well, we just went through the revaluation, and they look at those parcels, so we're able to set the values where we think they really are, and we use income approach on a lot of these commercial parcels, so they're looking at rental, a vacant building's only worth, whatever the income approach is.
Right.
And the income approach is what is defensible at ATB. That's what they look for. So we do use those approaches. So this was a good year because, we've kind of looked at that and said, some values go up and some go down.
Along that line, what about very fine? How does that impact?
Right, that's the next one coming.
Yeah. Any decline in one, parcel would affect, the rest of the residents in that parcel. I think the timing is, fortuitous in that, yes, you get a decline in one parcel and then you get an increase by new additions in other parcels and other classes. So because of the situation that we're in with the growth, we're able to mitigate some of that decline in value.
Bonnie, what do we do when we have a vacant property and all of a sudden it's filled up? Does that change immediately as far as what we tax them on, or does that take?
The valuation is based on the value of the property as of January 1st in the preceding year. So whatever the status of that property, if we know they get a new tenant and they've signed a new lease and we get that, we will adjust the values accordingly. But it's always a year behind.
So they'll get a year from,
Yep.
They
basically.
get a year grace, yeah.
What about
Then
the
it's also
personal,
a year the other way, though.
what about the
They lose
personal
a tenant,
property
then they're
inside
stuck.
those commercial buildings?
It's the same
Is that-
thing. It's
the
based on
same thing?
what they have in there as of January 1st. What's in the ground and what's in the buildings as of January 1st.
Thanks.
So for 17, 18, and 19, you can see that we're estimating the residential growth in millions. This is the property values. So in 17, we're looking at about, 25, 26 million coming on in new residential housing value, another 15 million in commercial and industrial, and another, 9 million or so in personal property. And then you can see the changes in those categories in 18 and 19 for new growth. And then we're projecting, based on that, what the percentage of the residential is to the total value. So we're still looking at hovering around 78% of the total value being residential. Even with all the stuff that's going on, it's still going to be around 78%. So that was kind of an interesting one for me, because you think, wow, we're getting a lot of commercial stuff, but we're getting a lot of houses, too.
Houses too, right.
Houses are losers.
And that's the last slide I had, so I just thought it would be interesting to share. And I can email this out, too.
I was going to say,
Yep.
I didn't remember seeing that, but if you can, that'd
Yep.
be great.
Yeah, we just finalized these today, and we just finalized the paperwork
And when is the hearing on this?
Monday at 7:30.
This is the regular Board of Selectmen
Board of
meeting?
Selectmen meeting.
Okay.
And just before you sneak out, nothing funky going on this year that we aren't running wild with lawyers' fees or any of that?
No, I
Or-
keep looking at my reports, and I'm like, now that you...
Well, Veterans
just
Agent, but we
us.
know that one, right?
Yes, we knew that was, something, so I keep my eye on him, but we're not experiencing any major failures anywhere. Honestly, I think the maintenance plan has been helping with the buildings and.
Still a roof issue in one
Say
of the
that
schools?
loudly, don't whisper when you say that.
Wasn't there a recent roof issue in one of the schools? I didn't know where that went. Did I?
The high school roof is under repair, but there was an appropriation made for that.
Okay.
So they've got somebody over there.
Actually, that
Oh,
completed a
Is it
couple of
completed now?
weeks ago. Yeah.
But that's covered financially somewhere?
Under- yes.
There was an appropriation
Yeah,
for that. I think
Actually, it
was-
ran under the budget, slightly.
Yeah. So we're going to turn money back?
Well, a town meeting eventually, right? You could.
Well,
Yeah, we close them out after. We close them out when the project's done, so.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right, thank you,
Sorry.
thank you for staying. No, that's okay, thanks for staying. Okay, we need to clone you. Yeah, that's all right. I was hoping to do is just kind of grill her a little bit about what what are the machinations going on upstairs now, to get to the budget she's going to present to us next week. The back and forth that must go on for all that. And, yeah.
One of the other things.
That's why she laughed. She didn't want to, she wanted to answer that one.
If I may, so when we saw that this afternoon, Steve talked some more about like when you saw the commercial property values, and they said 35, and I believe it was Acton Toyota, IBM, and Potpourri were excluded from that because they're so far. So it's pretty interesting to see how they went through and came up with those numbers, excluding those types of properties because they kind of skew the numbers based on the inventory and everything else they have in them, the computer systems and IBM maybe. So that's what that company went in and did.
Be interesting to see what next year brings out, because actually Foster Street is filling up quite well right now. Both the buildings are getting new tenants in there. The upper one is almost full, and the bottom one is at like 50% right now.
Who's going in? Any idea?
Just all smaller, they're carving it up, it's
Okay.
these smaller, growth companies, and actually the, what's the one that's,
Defense contract.
actually the old XRE.
Yeah.
They've expanded across the
Yeah.
street also in the top floor of that
So
building.
that XRE building is full now?
That building is full,
Yeah.
and
And they're
the
using
one
half of
across
the other
street.
building.
Oh.
Moved over across the
And
street.
they're using half across the
Oh,
street.
wow.
Yeah, and the Electrolux building is empty, or just about empty, right?
Which one?
BJ Electronics. Yeah.
Oh, which one's that?
The top, right
On
across
Taylor
the
Street?
Up on Taylor.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Up on the top of the hill there. I mean, it's 30,000, it's a small building, but it's just, come and go.
They gave me through the grapevine, but they're being very close to invest and moving down at Sunny Delight. Very fine. But to being real tight with who it is or what it is, which is there.
Right.
They've been very difficult to deal with all along, to be quite honest with you.
Starting to rumor it's the Avella Brewery.
It's very strange
Everybody wants a
now,
microbrewery,
driving
that's
by
for
there. There's nothing there. It's really,
Smokestack's not working. There's
it's
nothing
really
going on.
strange.
Yeah, that's right.
In Indian Hills moving, did somebody say that they're going to Groton? Yeah?
I thought that was an addition going to Groton. I didn't think
I
that
didn't know,
was.
but somebody else told me they were moving, so.
They haven't said,
Whole new venue out.
but they bought that property over there, and that's where they really wanted to be to begin with.
Yeah,
So
they're- yeah.
I'm suspecting that'll happen next year.
They're building a huge outdoor concert venue. They looked all over Littleton, actually. They just couldn't find what they looked at, they wanted to stay in Littleton originally, and they just couldn't find the property. They talked to everyone who had was it 50, they were looking for like 50 some odd acres. And then some of the properties that caused the problems, they wanted to do an outdoor venue, were too close to the highways, which of course would be problematic for an outdoor concert. So,
It'll be a sad loss to lose them.
Okay. That was, I guess that's pretty much what I had. Anybody else have anything?
Just to bring you up to date on things that are happening in FY16 to the budget. It's small potatoes, but the state is minimum wage is going up to $10 an hour on January 1st. That impacts salary grids for Park and Rec. Specifically, summer people, lifeguards, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to have to adjust, or we're at least looking at adjusting the rates in Park and Rec. It will not be a huge number, but salaries will be going up.
Is that in their budget now for next year? Is that in the next year's budget?
Well, we don't, oh, for FY17? Yeah.
Right, because it really shouldn't impact this year that much, because, I mean, the beach
It's
and that
gonna
stuff
be
doesn't open very much until July anyway.
It's small potatoes, but
Right, okay,
it's
something.
It's
Okay.
ongoing.
Yep, right, we should be aware of that, thank you. All right, good.
Did I miss, we gonna do with the capital plan another day, or is there nothing new on that? Right, just
Capital
here.
plan or left.
Right.
Right, okay, and, okay.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Anything new from your neck of the woods there, or anything interesting?
We
going on?
have a meeting tomorrow night, so I can't really say
Okay.
that there's anything new.
Okay.
We'd like to formally lodge a complaint about all the noise going on in the kitchen.
Well, at least something's going on.
That was tongue-in-cheek.
What's opening day is estimated for that now, you know?
Valentine's Day.
No.
That's what I heard from Pam. It would be Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Pay no attention to
Any
December
rumors from the
15th
selectmen you
in
can
the
share with us, or anything like that?
Nothing,
No?
I'm not hearing anything.
Motion
All right, then.
adjourned?
Oh,
Yep.
we get 2 minutes, don't we get minutes to go over?
We don't have any, because Marilyn wasn't here, so she's going to do them for us
Oh.
via
Okay.
recording, and we'll
I'm
have
just
them next
reading off my
time.
agenda, that's
Yeah,
all
I know. No, that's actually a reminder to me to tell them about it.
Then
Yes, Marion.
I'll second the motion that was.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
15 December,
Next
right?
mee's 2 weeks?
2 weeks,
Yeah,
15.
15th, that's the,
And that's the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, and then we should get all the budget stuff done. All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming, guys.
Never go